There are some times when you have a poor performer who is told they're going to go to training because they're a poor performer. It may not be that they need training. It may be that they just are a poor performer because they don't want to do the job, or because they're disengaged, or a whole number of different other reasons, and it really has nothing to do with training. So I just wanted to know, what do you do in those situations where you've got that delineation? I think we're all on board when the learner is completely engaged and they want to be there and they have their own goals and their own objectives, but what about that other side? How do we carve out that expectation for somebody that's there because they're one step out of losing their job and they're just being like, their manager's just basically, hey, I'm just going to make sure that we've given all the check marks so we gave you all the support you need before we fire you. Because it's a different person that's in your classroom now. And how do we account for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm thinking about it from two different perspectives. One is thinking about students in the classroom who don't want to be there. And for them, a lot of times it is really understanding what they need and understanding what they want, how to reach them. And by building a relationship with them and understanding what their background is, who they really are, what they want to do in life, and being able to tie a lesson or a concept to that particular unique interest, I've seen that's been a way to reach students who sat in the classroom and really didn't want to be there.
The captive.
Yeah, exactly. And some of this is over time. So you're not going to be able to do this in one day. It's the consistency of the teacher or the educator over time with that student to show authentic care and authentic want to get to know that student, and to not see them as the problem child, to not see them as, oh, there's something wrong with you, but to really volley with them and say, I understand you don't want to be here, and I want to understand why. And I want to get to the root cause of that with the student, so then we can identify, okay, how can I adapt what I'm doing as the teacher to meet this student better? Or how can this student share with me something deeper that's going on that then we can work with and show progress along the way? Then let's go to the adult learner who's in training because they have a performance plan or something like that. And I really think it boils down to asking those questions, again, getting to know those individuals. And I'm a big advocate for, if you have a larger training class, to provide opportunities where there are cohorts or smaller subsections of the larger group, so that you as the trainer can better build relationships with the students who are in your classroom. I remember doing one cross training where it was exactly what you said. There was an individual there who didn't want to be cross-trained on that particular concept. And by understanding why, and really she felt threatened by the new content, and really helping her understand why we had to learn this, why we were making this change, why there was an adaptation, and addressing her specific fears where she felt threatened. Again, this is more like change management philosophy, but I think really addressing that is what helped get her over the hill with her resistance to learning that particular thing.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So
what about in your experience?
Well, I think,
because that is a challenging question.
Yeah, it was totally out of the blue too. I think maybe there's a couple of things we could do. The first is expectations is really the theme of this session. And how are we describing to a management team what the expectations are for who should attend this session?
Yes.
So that might be one part. And I think it goes to benchmarking as the first part. You should not be sending someone to this course who already knows these things. That's a waste of time and a waste of effort. Like, why would you spend money on this? It's like having somebody who has met all the benchmarks for third grade proficiency, and you're going to still stick them through third grade. Like, that doesn't make any sense. They're going to be bored out of their mind. We need to find some way to challenge them and give them more. And you've probably had kids like that in your class, that like the curriculum is really meant for somebody who doesn't know as much as you. And we need to figure out a way to challenge you so you don't sit there and just make trouble for everybody. So I think that's maybe the first part about it. But the second part, I think, would say you're still going to have instances where you've got a captive in your classroom. So I like the idea of seeing yourself as that networking, training advocate, building that relationship. And I think when you have education as a relational component and seeing yourself wanting to know the stories and wanting to build those relationships with folks, I think that really does make a difference in the way that someone shows up when even they're forced to be there. And we just all need to acknowledge that might be incidentally 1 or 2 or even 10 people that end up in a classroom might be a captive. But if we go back to that law of large numbers, the majority of the people that we have in a classroom are hopefully not the captives. And if they are, that's a way to maybe provide some anecdotal evidence as a training. And that's part of what we want to benchmark and talk to and figure out how to address that. And is there room for remedial training? Is there room for that sort of thing? And I think the answer is probably yes. There probably should be something there. But maybe there's a special class that's just for that, so we can really attend to those folks' needs. Or maybe not, right? There may be all sorts of routes we can go with that, right?
And as a trainer, we can build in some change agility into that, especially when we're working with adult learners. I had done a change agility workshop, and the way I brought my learners through that workshop was really having them own what they wanted. So for instance, identifying what their values were, what was most important to them, and identifying what those non-negotiables at work were for them. And if the change that they were facing, the new content, the new technology, the new platform, the new team, if that in any way made them compromise or conflict with those values and with those non-negotiables at work, actually giving them the ownership and the autonomy to say, is this really the right job for me? Is this really the right fit for me anymore? Or is this change coming down the pike? Is this actually my cue to pivot in some way? And really giving them back the reins, because a lot of people feel like they're the victim of change. But when you look at it from that reverse scenario, and not always is there like a job that they can immediately go into, but it changes their mindset where they all of a sudden have some agency in this. And I think especially as adults, reclaiming that agency is incredibly empowering when we are feeling the threat of sometimes that new change.
Yeah. I actually can think of a situation where I saw that play out exactly as you're saying it. I was working with a call center who was primarily service driven. And based on some organizational changes, they got bought up by another company. And this company was a lot more focused on revenue generation and wanted to use those folks to cross-sell some of the different products. So you've got a whole team of people who have done really well as customer service reps who are now being asked to be sales reps.
Wow.
That's not...
So their job function was changing almost.
But it's still within the confines of a service role, but it really has a lot more of a revenue generating element to it now. And so to your point, there's some people that were on that group as we're going through training that really embraced that and found it very enjoyable. It was a new challenge. It was great. They had something new to aspire towards because maybe they've been doing this job for a while and it was starting to get a little old, but now here's something new to reinvigorate me. I have this new challenge I can have. And then there were some other folks that it was part of their core competency that they don't want to sell stuff. Like really driven inside of them. I don't like the feeling of being sold, nor do I want to sell to people. And it doesn't matter how many times we talk about sales as a service, because I definitely believe that. If you have the opportunity to go to your favorite place of buying things and you can buy everything there, you would feel really good about that experience. It would be a great service. It doesn't matter how many times you say that. If somebody's, look, that's fine and all, have it on the shelf, but I don't want to be the one handing it to people. And that's fine, right?
Yeah.
To your point. And there were a few folks on it.
It's not everybody's personality.
Yeah, there's some people on the team that ended up not being there forever and they found something else. And hopefully it was something that they really enjoyed a lot more than the direction this particular role was taking. But I think it goes back to that leadership level of saying, if the objectives of this particular role are changing and it is now going to be revenue generating, not service focused, and that's very clearly articulated. It's not just subjective. It's not just, oh, I would like it to be. No, but it's very clearly these are the expectations for the role. I think it does give that person that autonomy to say, I can either embrace that and decide that I'm going to change myself and learn this curriculum and figure out how to do this really well. Or it may be my cue. I don't want to do it anymore. And that's okay too. So sometimes the measurement of success is when people leave a role that they shouldn't be in anymore.
Yeah. So true. So true. It is our job as an educator, as a trainer, to gather those results at the end and communicate them back to leadership. Because sometimes there is a disconnect where we're so caught up in training that we don't take the time, we don't carve out or block time to ask those results-based questions, capture those results, curate those results, put them in a one-pager, or show up to a meeting and actually advocate for what we did, for our workshop, for our training, and say, these were the data points, these were the training results, the impact of what we did here.
And, if I'm an executive, and I'm making this up because I'm not, but if I was an executive that said, I need to grow revenue by 6% this year, and that's the goal. So it means sales are up or operations, whatever you're in. There's some sort of clear metric target that I want to get to and I want to achieve. And now as a training organization, you put on my desk a one pager that shows clearly not just the level 4, but it's inclusive of level 1. We know how people reacted to this training. We know where they were at the beginning and they couldn't, and now they can. We saw the behavior change. And then we saw that there was an uptick in sales this year.
Yes. Correlating. Actually, sometimes we have to advocate for ourselves and make those connections to our leaders. And bringing it back to the K-12 experience, we need to also advocate for our students, to their parents and to our admin, that we can show that growth. I think of some students who scored poorly on a standardized test multiple years in a row, but because they went from a reading level of a grade 1 to a grade 3 in my 4th grade class, I was able to show those data points. And I was able to communicate to the parent that even though your student isn't reading on grade level, look at the measurement, look at the results, look at the impact of these 10 months working with your student. He is now up to a grade 3 reading level. And that is something to celebrate. And that is worth noting. That's huge progress for a student.
So the directional element is just as important as necessarily the results themselves, is being able to look at that and say, even if we didn't necessarily hit sales target this year, we were here and now we're there. That's directionally relevant. Just to wrap this up, I want to tell a quick story. So this is personal. I've got a high school student that's playing on our soccer team at the local high school. And directionally, they have had a soccer program that has not been good. The results have not been good over the past, for as long as anyone can really remember. I think the last few years, they may not have even won a game. That's tough, right? It's tough to go into a program like that. This year, they have a new coaching staff. Coaches are trainers, by the way. So thanks to all you coaches that are listening on here too, right? This is amazing. You're amazing people. And this year, they've tied a lot of games. Now, that's not a winning record, but that is not a losing record. And they have won some games too. So there has been a directional change from a program where they have not won, they've lost games, to now tying. Directionally, it may not mean that they're a playoff ready, but directionally, they're moving in the right direction. And I know, because I know some of the coaches, it's partly because of the attitude and the enthusiasm and the dedication that these coaches have had for these young men who have been in a program where there's just a mindset that needed to be changed, that we are not good. When you have a coaching program that can change that mindset and really deliver those same results that we've seen that are moving in the right direction, like, I don't see any reason why in the next couple of years they couldn't be a playoff team.
Wow.
Right? And again, right?
Yeah.
Are they playoff ready now? Nope, not this year. But directionally, I can say that's a training team, that's a coaching team, that's a coaching staff that's doing the right thing. They're taking it from losses to ties. It's the third grader who isn't reading at third grade level, but is no longer reading at a kindergarten level. We need to celebrate that. It's the sales organization that may not have had their best banner year ever, but they're now in the black instead of in the red. And that's the kind of things that directionally, if we're able to show that there's been a partnership, there's been an intervention, there's been a program that we've really tied to those business results, the organizational results, the community results, put that in front of anybody and show the directional changes, I think they're going to be really swayed, at least that there's a correlation, if not causation.